Transatlantic Talk with Caroline Feraday.
Yeehaw! Good morning, Caroline.
Well, good morning. Is it Trump positivity that she means, or I was just reminded? Do you remember in the second Iraq War, comical Ali, Mohammed Saeed al-Sahaf, who was the chap who was head of communications or whatever, he would just be positive as Baghdad burned behind him. Yeah. I mean, is that it?
Well, I mean, what Rachel Reeves is saying, this is the front page of the Times this morning. She says we must learn from President Trump's positivity, be more optimistic if it is to revive the animal spirits and turn the economy around. Claire Muldoon and I were talking about this earlier. You know, look, Donald Trump, I think it is fair to say, look, even if you don't like Donald Trump, he has said, right, I'm going to put America first. He's got a definitive energy policy, which is drill, baby, drill. The front page of the Telegraph is quite extraordinary. Migrants, illegal migrants being stuck on American Air Force planes and being flown to Mexico. Trump has made an impact. Claire Muldoon was saying even when she was in New York, people who would naturally be Democrats said, well, look, at least Trump is putting people first. What's your reading of that? I know you're in LA, which is a very democratic state, so therefore it's not going to be fully representative of the United States. What's your reading? He has hit the ground running.
Well, yes. Yeah, I think we've all got a bit of whiplash. Yes. I mean, I've never been like, what are Donald Trump's core, what 5 words would you pick to describe Donald Trump? Positive wouldn't be in the word. And I've studied this man quite a lot. And I don't think people around him would say he's a particularly positive man. The reason he says, put America first, this, that, and the other, is because he spends all his time saying America's terrible now and everything's terrible, and then name calling.
So I would say
I don't know if I would characterise that as positivity.
Well, the video footage I'm showing you is really powerful. This is, he has said these people are here illegally. We're paying for them. They're out.
Yes, and that is the ticket that he ran on, and he is now obviously making a show. If you are somebody who is in the United States, undocumented, perhaps for some time, then I think these raids might well be making you quite nervous right now. It's one of those things, isn't it? You start with people who, this one's a criminal and this one's right. It's very easy to get behind that and then expand it.
But I mean, the thing is, look, you and I know that, let's take LA, there are a lot of people there who have sort of arrived illegally, who are used as the workforce in LA. They're paid cash in hand, so they never were there legally. And I suppose what he's done, and I would say he's positive, his message to America was the golden era of America begins now. We will be the envy of every nation. Certainly from European standpoint, the EU deeply worried about what a Trump presidency means for them.
Yeah, so for instance, just north of LA, Ventura County, that really is kind of where all the food comes from, an enormous amount of food. And there's an enormous amount of farm workers who work there. And so America, has to consider whether it will have a problem if it cracks down completely on undocumented workers. But yes, those are very powerful pictures. But honestly, he was inaugurated on Monday.
Yeah.
You'd expect at this point us just to be reflecting, saying, oh, what a ceremony that was. Look at Melania's hat, just generally. But instead, that so much has happened since then that in those few days since then, as I said, there's all of these executive orders. So I'm not saying that any of these things happening. So these are executive orders where he's rolled back, for instance, policy on artificial intelligence. He pardoned the January 6th rioters in a blanket pardon. He's attempted to end what's called birthright citizenship. If you want me to explain that, I'm right here for it.
Yes, we mentioned, please do, because we mentioned this earlier, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Yes, I think that's the point, is it's all well and good to argue the pros and cons and that to be put in front of the decision-making body and them to vote on it. That's where laws are supposed to be made. it is something. It's one of those things that is different to the UK, a bit like guns, but is enshrined in the Constitution. So as you know, they're like, it's in our Constitution, and that is the holy grail of laws. And then, you know, things might get changed, but there is this constitutional birthright that if you are born in the United States, that you are a United States citizen, and that isn't the same in the UK. And the pros and cons of that, I think, are reasonable arguments on both sides. But is the way to tackle it to
I was going to say, I mean,
these executive orders without any debate, without any
under the Constitution, he's able to do that. I mean, the birthright citizenship has existed since 1868, so that is quite an about turn. I'll tell you what people in this country are looking at. The fact is, he says we're going to have cheap energy, we're going to drill, baby, drill. One of the other things that has been greeted very warmly over here is when he said there are two sexes, male and female.
Yeah, although, David, you're a doctor. So the wording of that says you will be the gender that you were assigned at conception. Can you tell me what gender you are at conception? Female.
Right.
So apparently we're all women now.
OK, but that's been... we won't go into the minutiae of all of that. But also just in terms... I mean, there are some funny ones in there, renaming the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. Mexico says, well, you can do what you like. It's still going to be called the Gulf of Mexico. One of the big things also is about tariffs. And the American public will be saying, well, this is a great thing because America first. If you import stuff, you're going to have tariffs put on it. The UK has been put in this rather invidious position of pleading, I think, with Donald Trump. This is Jonathan Reynolds. He says, well, the UK doesn't have a trades... we have a trades deficit with the United States, so please can we be exempt?
Yeah, look, it's all a negotiation with Donald Trump, and the way to his heart is flattery. To go back, you were saying about drill, baby, drill. You've got to remember who put millions and millions into Donald Trump's campaign, and he promised them that that the oil and gas bosses put $1 billion into his campaign, he would prioritise those priorities, and he's doing good on that. I mean,
he is.
You know, and it's really interesting. So he is also withdrawn from the World Health Organization, or has an intention to withdraw from the World Health Organization.
I think he has. Yeah.
He's talking about ending FEMA. So Donald Trump FEMA is the disaster organization at federal level that when there is a national disaster in the United States, the hurricane in North Carolina, the fires that we've had in Los Angeles or anywhere else across the United States, this federal organization is sort of brought in who kind of deal with it all. And he wants to just get rid of them and then sort of not have that federal input. He arrived in Los Angeles. He went to North Carolina first, to the hurricane area in North Carolina, much more like a purple area. North Carolina came to Los Angeles. He was met on the tarmac by Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. Those, you know, he's quite sort of disparaging about Newsom. He calls him New Scum on social media. So there's a lot of sort of name calling. Newsom met him on the tarmac and did this sort of act of diplomacy of saying, we need your help here. And Trump kind of went and surveyed the details. He's got in his head this thing about water from Northern California, which wasn't the issue with the fires, or the lack of water with the fires. But anyway, that was to do with hydrants, separate issue. Plenty of water in the reservoirs. For anyone who's confused about this, There was plenty of water in the reservoirs. There wasn't enough in a municipal water system to fight a fire. I saw those winds in Scotland that you had yesterday, like ripping the tops off buildings. That's the sort of wind gusts we're talking about, having a dry fire in.
And in terms of the fires, are they, from my understanding, they're still burning?
It's been quite the week. So, I mean, they've got containment, but we've had a few new ones. It's still incredibly dry. And I know you won't want to hear this because you've got, rain, and you'll be like, we'd love some of that. Yeah. Honestly, it's like it just literally saps all of the moisture out of your body the second you go outside in these horrible winds. So it isn't nice. And then various sort of fires popping up, but we've got so much coverage here now. With firefighters from all around the country, and they can get the air cover up, that they can get a much quicker grip on those. And then on Sunday we'll get some rain. This is where it gets yes, you say that, but having driven over to the areas, it's very steep, and now there's nothing holding the soil together, so that they're handing out sandbags and everything, because there's this real risk of landslides in the areas where the burn scars are. Some years ago, 2018, so recent memory, something like 28 people died after the Thomas fire in Santa Barbara County when there were mudslides through Montecito. So it is another real danger. But from what I can see, what's being kind of forecast rain-wise, it's not quite the sort of torrential rains, hopefully.
Hopefully not.
It's a little bit.
Should we finish on sort of something more positive, which is the latest Academy Award nominees being announced?
Yeah, so, Hollywood ploughing ahead with Hollywood things, and I'm sure they'll do their bit for the fire victims and stuff, but the Oscar nominations came out this week, so if you want to spend a bit of time seeing some of those movies before the Oscars on March the 3rd, it's a really interesting year because there's no really obvious front runner, and there's some quite interesting movies. Amelia Perez has a record number of nominations, as does Wicked, actually, with 10. Amelia Perez, I think, has 14, might be 13, somewhere around there. Obviously, the Brit we're rooting for, Cynthia Erivo, she is magnificent in Wicked. She really is. She's a masterclass in it. And she could be, with that nomination, the youngest. Do you know what an EGOT is? An Emmy, a Golden Globe, an Oscar, and a Tony.
Wow,
it's a very rare group of people, a very small select group of people, and she has 3 of the 4. So if she does win the Oscar, she would be the youngest member of the EGOT, all 4 winners. But she is up against Demi Moore, and although Demi Moore isn't the favourite, I would keep an eye on that, because the way that they vote, they love a comeback story, don't they, in Hollywood?
Everyone loves that, the golden era of Hollywood. Caroline, really good to talk to you. Caroline Feraday, today's Transatlantic Talk.